Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. My name is David Brear and I'm the CEO here at 11FS. In this show, we shine a bit of a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what is it that gets them going, growing, and what they really think the future of the industry will look like. On today's show, I am delighted to welcome aboard Bidyut Dumra, who is the Executive Director and Group Head of Innovation over at DBS. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for making it.
David, thanks a ton for having me. But quick question, is anyone else joining us? Because you said best and brightest. And this...
I mean, I panicked for a second then, but well, your reputation precedes you, as does all of the great work that you guys have done at DBS as well. You're very humble, but I've seen the awards room. It's very deep in terms of what you guys have done. But on today's show, what we're going to be doing is deep diving a little bit into Bidyut's career and taking a little bit more of a double click into exactly what it is that DBS have been doing to really foster innovation across the group. Because it's been a really amazing story, and actually one that I don't think even you guys with the impact that you've had within the Singaporean and broader market, everybody wants to be like DBS globally, which is an amazing thing to have when you're impacting your peers in such an amazing way. But maybe if we start off before we get too deep into your career, for anybody who doesn't know DBS, what's the elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit more.
Okay, DBS. Let me start off. I'll take you about a decade or so back. DBS was regarded as damn bloody slow. Now it's not a place where we wanted to be. So as a leadership team, we went on this huge transformation, and we've sort of reclaimed our title as the Development Bank of Singapore. We moved on to, I guess, being the Digital Bank of Singapore. And now we just call ourselves the different kind of bank. So yes, nice. We are a bank. We are 55 years young. I think we've got about 740 billion in assets, 8 billion plus in profit. We've got about 36,000 lovely people that are committed to our brand promise, which is live more, bank less.
Very nice. That's a great North Star in that sense, isn't it? You sort of bank less, because that's quite a different narrative to. I mean, a lot of metrics people have in organisations is they want people logging in more, they want people banking more, but that's an interesting sort of view of actually the North Star of the organisation more broadly.
So yes, it was interesting. We went through this exercise of I guess understanding our place in the world as an organisation, and the humble realization that people, of course, need banking, and banking as a service is very noble because you're greasing the economy and you are enabling and enriching people's lives and you're enabling businesses. But it's not something that people wake up and look forward to doing. So the entire ideology was, how do we get people to achieve the job to be done, but in a way that it's so frictionless and intuitive and seamless that they don't even know that they're doing it. So hence, live more, bank less.
No, I like that. It's a big believer in jobs to be done as well. And actually, as you say, the sort of real realities of people's lives is really the context for financial services in that way, isn't it? But tell me a little bit more then about, I mean, super duper awesome job title, and you're working in a great organization. Like, how did you get here? Because I mean, there's a lot of people who watch this, listen to this globally, who really want to get into financial services. So tell us a little bit more about your career trajectory.
Okay, so when it comes to my rubric of making decisions and choices, I'm driven by two aspects, and that's learn and laugh. So whenever I'm at a crossroad deciding what I should do, I'll ask myself, where am I going to learn more, where am I going to laugh more? And that's, I guess, taken me on this journey where I have tried a number of different professions. So prior to DBS, I was actually I'd started and I was running the innovation center at Cathay Pacific, the airline. Before that, I was working at in the energy field, and then I've done automotive, I've done television, you name it, I've sort of gone through it. And so when I was at a decision point of thinking what to do next, my wife is Singapore Chinese, and she wanted to come back into Singapore. And I said, okay, what is Singapore really known for? And government came up and banking came up. So I actually put those two, and I said, okay, when it came to the choice of where I'm going to learn more and laugh more, the bank turned up trumps. And then when you look at where I could exercise innovation, because that's the field I'm in, DBS resonated as number one, and here I am. I've been here
Yeah.
for a bit, looking after the innovation space. And I think one thing I guess I'll add to the fact in that entire learning and laughing is because I guess banking and financial services is powering a number of different industries. Like nearly any industry is you've got a material flow, you've got an information flow and a transaction flow. So the canvas of banking actually has surprised me. I underestimated how much fun I would have and how diverse the role would be. So I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, and banking, obviously, I mean, banking is as a silo, a very important silo in society. But actually, there are far more innovative industries than banking. So actually, all of that experience you brought from other industries is probably really, really helpful because you've sort of seen this movie before. In the travel industry, there's obviously digital has had a really big impact, but in an industry that is, very much a physical product. It's hard to get on a plane without leaving your house. But financial services is much more ethereal. It is a service in that sense, isn't it? But having seen that movie, having seen digital change other industries, do you think that's helped you with your transition into financial services?
For sure. And the other is, besides bringing that experience across, it's also having the exposure has enabled to work with our ecosystem of clients and partners as well. I mean, to your point where we talk about job to be done, for example, if an organization essentially is looking, or let's say a person is looking at buying a house, it's one fragment of the journey is with the bank where they're looking at a mortgage, but there is this entire discovery of which house to buy, how to choose, where to get there, and then at the end, how to shift into that house, enjoy and live the house. So having worked in retail, I've got a bit of that experience on the front and back, and the same with the automotive, and the same with the travel, and the same with the education and F&B. So the ability to ideate and to work with not only that sliver of banking, but also with the industry, that's where I think I've probably been able to add the most value.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you about that for hours because I think that's such a fascinating thing in terms of the different things you've learned from all of those industries. But maybe if we bring it back to DBS and particularly the innovation, the journey, as you said that you guys have been on, and maybe if we look at the time that you have been in financial services, I mean, we're at our sort of narrative at 11FS is that digital banking is only 1% finished because of the journey that's ahead of us, the 99% of the innovation still to come. And it feels like on a yearly basis, whether it's regulatory change or technological change or, political, whatever, economic environment, like actually the world is changing so quickly and banking has been doing a pretty good job of innovating to keep up with that. But how have you seen the sort of changes in the industry since you've been part of it?
Again, one thing where you say banking's been, I guess, part of the change because we have no choice. And our competitor landscape is changing, our customer landscape is changing, our partner landscape is changing. I think it's pretty much table stakes to be innovating. So even on our side, when we looked at what our innovation agenda is, we were very conscious that we said our agenda is to be most innovative. And that's very much realizing that everyone is innovating. So if you really want to create that runway, that keyword is most. And picking up another sort of point you mentioned. So just last week I went up to Germany. I was speaking to one of the large automotive organizations there. And I was talking about our transformation journey and how we have morphed ourselves. And they asked me, like, what's the title? What are you going to call this talk? And I called it the never ending story because I talked about the different phases we've gone through from where we were very much regarded as, I guess, the worst, sitting at the bottom of the customer ratings, to how we sort of moved our way to now holding the accolade of the world's best. And for me, the key was the consciousness. It wasn't something that happened. It wasn't something that just came to be. There was a consciousness from a leadership perspective that we want to make this change. We want to make this transformation. And then we basically pushed our way forward. But again, we didn't have a choice. But where you do have the choice is the pace. So the pace of change, the velocity, how you want to drive that level of ambition and aggression, that's where I find there's a differentiator between different organizations in the industry. That appetite for change. So that's one side. But to make it reality, it's the muscle of change. So those are the two things that I think are key. And I think those apply for not only the banking industry, but for any industry. That appetite and that muscle, they are two key components.
That's interesting there, because the appetite, you say, is, I mean, that's the hunger for continually evolving. As you say, really, you haven't gone through a single transformation, as you say, you've gone through multiple transformations, and actually the market has shifted dramatically and customers have shifted dramatically, as has yourselves in terms of what you actually do for your customers. So it's interesting, isn't it, that I always kind of think the sports team metaphor is quite a good one. Is, each season is different. There's different challenges, different competitors, and you've got to keep getting up and getting out there to make these things happen, haven't you? It's not a marathon and it's not a sprint. It's probably a series of marathons, isn't it, in that way?
I mean, you're speaking to a sports fan, so I love that entire sports analogy, and it's true actually. Even things like the rules and regulations change, and then you've got new teams coming in, you've got different sponsors, you've got, I guess, even your fans are demanding different things. So I think that that works really well.
And maybe sort of touching, you sort of say there's no longer and I completely agree with you on this. It's no longer optional. Standing still and hoping it goes away is not the answer. Therefore, particularly with the competitive landscape changing as it is, and customers' expectations changing as it is. But I guess how do you manifest that in an organization? Because the competitive landscape today with not only fintech players establishing themselves, but also very large partnerships and big global banks doing different things within geographies you play with as well. And gigantic technology players straying into financial services as well, right? There's a very different dynamic today than there was even 5-10 years ago now.
So for us, what we've done is, again, going back to this very conscious decision of us being or wanting to be most innovative, what we've done is we've crafted out our own proprietary framework. So we call it the innovation pyramid. So think of a pyramid, and it's broken up into 4 tiers. So right at the top of the house, at the tip, we've got what we call our big bets or big themes. This is where we run through a process of getting our senior most people, so the top 20 executives in the organization, and running through where and how the world is shifting. What are the key trends that are moving around? And against that, we spend a fair bit of time. When I talk about a fair bit of time, it's about 1 month of education and 3 days of workshop, where we are deciding what are the bets we want to make at the top of the house. So we call them the big themes. So if for anyone out there who's a fan of K-pop, we call them big themes. And when we identify a big theme, we create a big theme squad. So we have our own BTS in the organization. so that's sitting at the top. The next tier is what we call Horizon 3s. Now, we've organized the bank into 33 platforms. So you can consider them, for simplicity, product portfolios. So the 33 platforms, we get each of them to go through this process of identifying a Horizon 3, which means what is a product that doesn't exist today that should or could exist. So now you've got a next layer or evolution of products that we plan to bring to market. The third is what we call journeys that wow. And this is where we look at our existing products and propositions that are in the competitive marketplace. And we say, how do you make them wow? How do you make them pop? How do you make them differentiate? How do you create a runway between yourselves and the competitors of today? And right at the bottom, we've got what we call the entrepreneurs. This is where we go We call them zero governance innovation. We go out to everyone in the organization and we give them a forum and platform and programs that they can come up with an idea, they can test and validate it, and then push it towards sponsorship and execution. So we call that wildcards. So wildcards at the bottom, innovations of today, then innovations of tomorrow, and right at the top, innovations of the day after. So that's how we structure our different lenses, and we are working from the topmost senior people to everyone in the organization. So that's our construct. And against that construct, so when I talk about that, creating the appetite and the muscle, the fact that we push this program in this way throughout the year, that creates a cadence for us. And that is how we are consciously getting nearly every business line, every product line to think of, how am I going to win? How am I going to get that job to be done in a way that is joyful, delightful, and meaningful, so that we can keep staying relevant to in the hearts and minds and hopefully wallets of our customers.
Yeah, I mean that's a fascinating point, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? Where you think of, there's many organisations you can think of who have done something innovative once, and actually, I mean, to keep the sporting metaphors going, I mean, if you throw enough balls from the half court, you would probably hit one eventually, right? So, but actually be able to sink a shot from the 3-point line, with consistency is what you're looking to do. And I love that idea of this begins from the top, doesn't it? This is really, you're predominantly limited in big organizations by the frame of horizon that your organization's senior leadership really have. And if you're continually pushing them to, try and let go of some of the things that have almost, made the company successful in the first place in order to understand what will make them successful in the future, then, actually it really isn't about innovation. It isn't about revolution. It's about continual evolution in that point, isn't it?
I mean, David, you're taking the couple of sentences I'm saying and you're going like Savant style into our organization. That's exactly. So when we crafted out the program, that was key. We sort of wanted to make sure that it was sustained, and we lynched on to creating this cadence of change and having programs that would go round and round to make sure that we kept that momentum going. So we call that, so for us, the terminology we use, industrialization of innovation. So how do you create the platform, the forum, the nudge, the push, and then you also add the art and science to innovating. So for each of these, we've got structured programs. But you're right. We wanted to make sure that the organization is not reliant on opportunity. It's not reliant on chance. It is very much powered and driven by that sort of consciousness, that drive. So that's why now, for me, I guess to a certain extent, we've got a mechanism. So where I spend my time as the I guess the group head of innovation is more around this ambition and aggression. Is how do you get the organization to have bigger dreams, and then have the belief to start investing to make those dreams a reality. And then the aggression part is getting the leadership to demand it now. So how sooner can we get to that time, reduce that time to value? So
Yeah.
those are the aspects. So it's fun. I mean, I'm enjoying myself.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? That as you say, that sort of macro understanding of where you want to get to, and then the sort of aggression of purpose of driving people towards that. I mean, I guess one of the things in that mix that's changed. We talk a little bit about the competitive landscape, but actually the people you work with now are very different in that traditional sense as well. And that that fintech ecosystem of vendors, not just competitors, but people developing great KYC systems or new payment systems or new core banking or whatever. Like the vendor landscape is so much more different than it was. Again, every 16 months, every 2 years, it's changing dramatically. So, I mean, how is that sort of changing the way in which you operate as well? I mean, not just your procurement department, I imagine, but how more broadly than that?
So it's I guess it's interesting because we went through So we've got our own fintech team. So I've got the fintech office that reports up to me. And that has evolved and matured over time. I remember we started off and we would interact with startups and fintechs and fintech founders because we wanted to bring that culture into the organization. So we would create these hackathons and we would bring them in, and we wanted our leadership to see how they operated, how they had that level of, I guess, aggression, they had that level of desire, and how they were niche focused in pleasing the customer. That sort of evolved. So we used to run accelerators simply so we could understand the DNA of a startup. Then, as the market matured, and also how when we matured, we started crafting out startup programs where we could look at them as solution providers, like you mentioned. So now what we've got is we've got a program called Startup Exchange, and we have an inbound and outbound. From an outbound perspective, we will work with different lines of business and we'll identify problem statements that they might have. And then we basically will do a global search, curate, match them with the best startups. And then we have an accelerator that allows them to drop into the organization seamlessly and do a POC and then go into production. From the flip, we have the startup ecosystem. Now it's so mature and vibrant that sometimes they end up thinking of the solution before we do, and they end up cracking it before we do because they're faster, they're nimble, they're focused, and they've got less encumbrance than we do in regards to maybe navigating some of these rules, regulations, etc., etc. So they managed to get a little bit ahead. So now we've got the opportunity to look at what they have and bring it into the organization. So you've got this cross. But I think I was having a discussion with something. It was interesting where you would use the word fintech. At one stage, we would rely on them to bring in the tech. Now, on the flip side, they rely on us to bring in the fin. So you've got the ability for these organizations where they need us just as much as we need them, be it for distribution, be it for industry expertise, be it to navigate that rules and compliance and regulatory space, etc. So it works both ways.
So where do you see that really sort of moving to then from an industry perspective? Because we've seen sort of evolution of steps in other industries, and actually, my argument about banking is, and again we go back to, look, we think digital banking's 1% finish. We've moved from great services and humans breaking down the complexity of financial service and all the weird and wonderful acronyms that actually banking deals with, to sort of almost digital being kind of like self-service right now. But obviously with the advancements we're seeing with artificial intelligence and algorithms that can manage the work that a private banker used to do. Do you see that sort of commoditization of high-end experiences, arguably where we'll get to? Is it private banker for the mass market? Is it the CFO in your pocket? Or where do you see us really sort of getting to on this journey?
The interesting thing is all of those could be possible, and we've been, even when I started the organization, and for me, I came in with baby eyes. I knew nothing about banking, and everything was, I had a question mark on nearly everything, and all these concepts came up, and for many of these concepts, the technology wasn't there. It wasn't ready. So even like talk about AI, I remember we just now, there's been this huge flash and talk and about from Gen AI with the launch of ChatGPT. And we were sort of reflecting and we looked back and we were identifying a number of experiments that we are now running it. And there was a realization that about a decade or so back, when we had signed a deal with IBM Watson, a lot of the experiments that we're doing now were actually conceptualized back then, but we found the technology wasn't ready. But now the technology is ready. And now we're finding that we're getting way more traction because there is that advancement that's allowing us. So the realization was that, some of the fundamentals haven't changed. Some of the aspirations haven't changed. And we've always wanted to draw these paintings that we had in our mind, but we probably didn't have the right colors or crayons or material to get it done. So I find technology is the enabler. It's the equivalent of those colors and crayons that will allow us to paint the pictures that I think have been sitting in our hearts and minds for quite a while. So that's even the CFO in the pocket. We've been hearing and talking about that for yonks. The same, how do you democratize? But even on the democratization, for example, we launched a product where we started tokenizing bonds. And typical bonds that would get out, which had a ticket price of about $250,000, we tokenized them and we were putting them out for about $15,000. It completely changed the demographic or the segment of people that were now coming in to access an instrument which they wanted to, but they couldn't. So again, the desire was there, but now technology has enabled that to happen. So it's again coming back to, I guess, what I was saying is, how do you make people have that rebelief in those dreams and try and push them to reality?
Definitely. I mean, that's an exciting thing, and that journey ahead to make those things happen is an exciting thing to get out of bed and push the agenda for each time as well, isn't it? But we are running out of time, I'm afraid, so we are going to have to close out. But it's always nice to kind of leave, and you've had such a great career and such a great role that you're doing now. But it's always nice to sort of reflect on the advice you've been given to sort of get you to that point. So, I mean, what would be the best piece of advice you think that somebody's given you as sort of advice for getting your career on track or making those decisions? I love the laugh or learn part. That's a great one as well.
Okay, so for me, I was just because I knew this interview was coming up, and hats off to you and 11FS when I was thinking about, what are proxies of success and how do you know that you are actually making it. Getting on your show is one of them, so I put that as
very kind
as a tick. But when I was looking at 11FS and I was going through and I was seeing the name 11, and you all chose 11 because you're looking at that balance and harmony. So from my perspective, actually, I kind of believe my belief system is slightly different. I believe on the imbalance side. So for me, I'm sort of, and I went through this process where I was talking to someone and they said, and they were paraphrasing, and it's more that if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I'm more a subscriber of the yin and yang being on fire. I like pushing the limits. I like the imbalance. So to your point where you started the show with, I guess, best and brightest, this is more noisy and chaotic.
It is amazing though, isn't it? And I would echo exactly what you said there. I believe that so much of life is actually turning up and putting in the effort, isn't it? And actually you find, and that isn't a day or a week or a meeting or or even one job. If you can sustain that level of effort for a really long period of time, that really differentiates people, doesn't it, in that way? And I said to you just before we started recording, I was over for the Singapore fintech festival, and I did a talk on exactly that, which is like, I was like a D's and E's kid, but like it just shows you what a lot of effort can do and where you can get to if you can do it consistently. But thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate you spending it with us and telling us a little bit about your story and all the great work that you've been doing. But if anybody wants to learn any more about you and all the great work you're doing at DBS, where should they go for?
Wow. Easiest is just catch me up on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And I'm fairly responsive over there. That's, I guess, the easiest way to get in touch with me. And I'm known for giving bad advice. So if anyone needs bad advice, you know where to come.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. It's all the time we have for you this week, I'm afraid, everybody. Make sure you follow 11FS on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your social media stuff. You can stay up to date with all the cool stuff that we've been doing and also catch all of the other episodes that we've recorded of this show over on the 11FS YouTube channel as well. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.